There's of course the geeky approach of using liquid nitrogen, which works really well because it freezes the water really fast, so you get small ice crystals.
Give us a lesson in that.
Liquid nitrogen?
Yeah,
oh.
What do you do with
Well, the liquid nitrogen stuff's actually a lot of fun. It's been done for over a century. You basically take your ice cream base, about equal parts ice cream base to liquid nitrogen, you throw it in a bowl. You should know how to handle liquid nitrogen.
That's pretty, 300 degrees below zero,
yeah,
so you got to be careful.
It's cold, but it actually freezes it very quickly, and it gives you really creamy texture, at least initially, because the first bit that happens when you make the ice cream is it comes to what's basically like a soft serve stage. And the second thing that happens is when you put it into your freezer, it sets up into a more solid state. So in soft serve stage, about 50% of the water is frozen. At the later stage, it's about 75-80% is frozen. In terms of ice cream makers, you're probably not going to get liquid nitrogen so easily, at your local grocery store.
If you're in a university campus, maybe in the chemistry department. Yeah.
Right. Salt and ice, the old traditional churning, is actually a great way of making it. And a lot of people think about the salt and the ice combining, to what they would say is freezing point depression. That's not actually really what's going on there. It's actually an endothermic reaction from the salt actually cooling down as it dissolves, cools down the surrounding mixture, and then of course the ice itself, as it melts, that takes a lot of heat in from the base. So, if you want, salt and ice in the old-fashioned churning, actually it's a fun summertime project. About 20 or 30 minutes you can set up some ice cream and, enjoy it. And if you're not worried about ice crystals, you eat it right away. You don't even have to deal with the possibility of not having enough fat or emulsifiers in there.
And if you are worried about the crystals?
If you are worried about the crystals, then you need to make sure that you actually get those fat, sugar, and emulsifier. Emulsifier is not necessary, but certainly it's a cheat. It helps. You have to make sure you get them the right ratio. Another thing is freezing it quickly is important. So not just when you churn it, but when you put it into your freezer. It's not, the freezer is not a time machine. It doesn't stop things. That ice cream has to still set up in the freezer. So set your freezer to as low as possible. Make sure that the container you're using is actually relatively thin and flat as opposed to a kind of a large box, because you need to get that whole thing to freeze up. And if it takes longer, those ice crystals have time to aggregate.
So like a cookie sheet?
Yeah, a cookie or just a baking pan. That actually will work better because you're talking about getting that whole mass to set faster. And the enemy with ice crystals is slow freezes. You want it to set as fast as possible. Another thing, of course, is in your freezer, make sure there's plenty of airflow so that you're not just putting your container, right next to some other stuff and there's no air to circulate against it in your freezer.
Wow, let's go to the phones. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to Science Friday.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
So I have an odd question about making ice cream while backpacking. I was wondering if you have any tips on making ice cream with dehydrated milk and snow and kicking around the ball.
This is very similar to the kind of standard fun physics or chemistry classroom demo you might do in high school, where you take, a ball or even a plastic bag. If you take that snow and you pack it around whatever your container is that holds your ice cream base, and if you can pack some salt with you, that table salt, when you throw it in that snow mixture, is going to, the process of it actually dissolving is going to take a fair amount of heat from the surrounding thing. I actually brought in a little demo of
All right.
which we
We'd
can
love
do if you like.
demos.
So what I've got here is a cup of water and a quarter cup, 50 grams of just standard table salt, and they're the same temperature. And you'll see that the temperature right now, I have not added them together yet. The temperature of that water is 74 degrees.
Right.
And if I dump this in,
salt, it's dropping.
It's dropping. So what's it saying?
It's down to 70. It's about 70.
Yeah.
Stirring it up.
So you saw almost instantly a 4 or 5 degree Fahrenheit just instant drop.
And that happens because?
That happens because the salt crystal itself, when the sodium and the chloride ions are splitting apart from that crystal, that takes a certain amount of heat. Now, to be clear, there's another thing going on here. It's not just the dissolving energy, there's also hydration energy. So as the sodium ions start to float around the solution, that actually also does some stuff. So I actually have a second demo here, just because,
Because we're Science Friday.
We're Science Friday. And this is calcium chloride. This is the stuff that you'd be sprinkling on your sidewalk out in the middle of winter.
Right. We had a lot of that.
And this stuff. So I'm going to take, I've got a second cup here. I'm going to take that probe thermometer, and it should go back up to, you can see it's a little bit warm.
It's up, 73 now. Back up.
73, okay. Now here's what happens when you add this stuff. It's a salt. It's a different salt, but it's still a salt. And look what happens to that temperature.
Whoa, it's going up to 83, 91, 103, 116, 121.
It gets hot.
124.
So this is just to say that when you're making the ice cream, salt is not just, incidental ingredient. If you want to go make ice cream while you're hiking and you got some snow around, some salt's actually going to help you pull off that trick.
And don't confuse those two salts.
No, and I would not eat one of them.
No. Sodium chloride. We have a lot of tweets coming in, and they want to know, can you make ice cream from soy or almond milk?
Sure, you still need to make sure that you've got enough fat in there. And if you're trying to make something with soy or almond milk, I'm going to assume that you're trying to go for something that's, shall we say, dairy-free.
That one vegetarian or, yeah.
So if you're going for a vegan ice cream, you still need to get that actual fat in there. But fortunately, nuts have a lot of fat. So from the fat point of view, you're looking for, again, that 14 to 22 is kind of the broader range. So you'd have to mix in some fats of some sort. You know, nuts would be a good source. You'd also need some sugar, because that sugar actually does do freezing point depression on the actual ice cream base. But it doesn't matter where the physical and chemical properties come from. It's not like the ice cream knows it's being made, you know, from a structural point of view with milk product. As long as you've got the actual carbs, fats, sugars, proteins kind of in the right ratio, and you treat it correctly in terms of the ice crystals, it'll still work.
And we have a caller who says, how do you get the texture, the right texture when you're using non-dairy or vegan ice cream? Is there a certain
this one's tougher, because at that point you don't necessarily have as much of the stabilizers that are present. So milk itself actually can act as a stabilizer for the emulsion in the liquid stage, the plasma stage of the actual ice cream. So you'll have to still deal with some sort of emulsifier. So if you want to make vegan ice cream, I would suggest seeing if you can use something like agar, carrageenan, xanthan gum, any of the products that are actually of vegan source. That'll help kind of give you some assurance that you don't necessarily hit everything exactly right.
A lot of people just don't want to make vanilla ice cream, right? They add candy, they got cookie dough, sometimes fruit. Now, when Becky Fogel went out to see Brian Smith over there at the Apple Hills Creamery, she asked him about adding strawberries to your ice cream. What's the best way to do that?
Anything with fruit in it that you want to pulverize or smush up and mush up and turn into a puree is a real challenge, because of course the number one ingredient in every fruit is water. So when we make strawberry ice cream, one of the tricks that you can do is you macerate the strawberries overnight first, which is to say you take your strawberries and you put a bunch of sugar over top of them, and then you leave them in the fridge overnight, and that sugar draws out the water from the strawberries. It draws out a lot of the water. And now you have your strawberries, which have a lot less water content.
Jeff, how does that sound to you?
That sounds delicious. Strawberries are really tricky, because they're like 92% water. And water is the enemy. Now, there's another thing going on here with the sugar, is that fruit, when he macerates it, is actually pulling in sugar. And sugar and water, just like salt and water, has a freezing point depression thing going on. So that fruit will actually set at a lower temperature. So yeah, removing some of the water will certainly help. But the other bit of it is adding sugar. So when you've got fruits, you usually want about, well, the technical papers say 21% sugar, but I'm just going to say 20%. So if you macerate your fruit in 3 or 4 parts fruit to 1 part sugar, you'll get something that actually has a lower freezing point that's roughly equal to the same texture as the ice cream.
Interesting. Tweet in from Andy, who says, my grocery store has dry ice. Is that good for making ice cream?
If you like your ice cream to be effervescent, you can do some interesting stuff there. As long as it's food grade, you can take powder it up, take a hammer, put it between a couple towels, and whack it up until it's, nice and powdered. And if you stir that into something that's more of a, fruit-based sorbet, something like sherbet, something like that, and you don't mind the effervescent place, because this is carbon dioxide, and it's in a partly carbonate the actual ice cream, which maybe that's what you like. Could be interesting.
Because they're even professional ice cream people pump air, right? They pump different to make frothier ice cream.
This is called overrun, and the home machines and doing this at home is hard to do. The machines that they use commercially actually can practically double the volume. If you ever look at light ice cream, the label of light ice cream, usually it's just got more air in it.
It doesn't weigh as much.
It doesn't weigh as much. You're just buying expensive air. So the overrun bit is actually an important detail in terms of the commercial stuff. At home, it's a little bit hard to whip that air in. But
last few words, what's the biggest mistake people make, and what should they not do?
Oh, Jesus.
Is it the temperature?
Biggest mistake is probably not actually setting it up quickly enough. Get it to be cold.
All right, there you go. Thanks for those tips. We were talking about tips for food failures with the guy who knows a lot about science and a lot about cooking, Jeff Potter, author of the book Cooking for Geeks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.
Good ice cream takes just the right ratio of fat to water to other ingredients, maybe a touch of stabilizer to keep everything blended together. That not-so-secret ingredient in public radio is you. Your support keeps this station operating. So please call now and support the programming you rely on. Here's how.
Very easy to do. You just give us a call at 866-247-9576, 866-247-WLRN, or online, WLRN.org. I'm Caroline Brader-Watts with Andy Wagner and Christine DiMattei. And Chris, it's amazing the things you learn on Science Friday.
Absolutely.
You think of it as being all this very technical, outer space kind of thing, and we're just learning about ice cream.
How to make ice cream.
Awesome. Well, what can we do to get folks to come to the phone and support Science Friday? You know what what are we looking for here? We're looking for some, dare I say, science geeks.
Yeah. No,
right?
you can say it.
Ira just said it, so I feel safe saying it. We're looking for some science geeks now to step up to the plate. Give us a call at 866-247-9576. Support this program, support the station, and gosh, maybe even wrap up this drive a little bit early.
We got a question for you. How did you find WLRN? How did you find NPR News? Maybe you discovered it on your own, surfing the dial, through a podcast you found on iTunes. When you needed to know more about a major event, such as an election or the war in Iraq, you went from discovery to wanting more, and now you're a regular listener. You're tuning in 10 to 15 times a week. Now, the reason you discovered WLRN is the same reason that you should make your contribution today. We wouldn't have been here for you to discover without all this financial support from our listeners, and that's why your contribution matters so much right now. Help us reach our goal. You can do that by calling 866-247-9576, and you can also do this online very simply by logging on to WLRN.org.
That's right, and we're going to get back to Science Friday in just a moment. The World coming up at 3 p.m. Of course, then will be followed by All Things Considered, and to wrap up the news for the end of your day. But speaking of wrapping things up, we want to wrap this pledge drive up early. We are scheduled to go through next Thursday at 7 p.m., but we don't have to. That is not written in stone. That's just what we have scheduled. If we can keep on track, if anything, if we can get ahead and start really getting in the pledges and the donations, we could even end this drive early, and that's certainly our goal. We want to get you back to an uninterrupted program schedule, and the only way we can do that is to reach our $450,000 goal. Now, we are more than a quarter of the way there. We've had a very, very good start, but here's where you come in. If you've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to make that pledge, that time has arrived. 866-247-9576, online, WLRN.org.
And we're going to be returning to Science Friday in a couple of seconds, but, this is time for me to do my best Thomas Dolby imitation. Okay, Science! Remember that song?
Blinded.
If you love Science Friday, if you love science and all things scientific, the way that you keep this and other programming on the air is by making that pledge today. And you do that by calling 866-247-9576, or you can do it online, WLRN.org. And one of the things you probably like best about listening to WLRN is that listening is often thought-provoking. Certainly today's program is no exception. We bring together experts and thought leaders to discuss the important news of the day or a big story of the week. Now, they don't tell you what to think or how to think. They share what they know, so you can make up your own mind. These days, with all the shouting and the pundits and the hacks, it's good that you have a space on the dial like WLRN where you can take in the facts and decide for yourself how to think about an issue. There's a real value in that experience. Now we're asking you to give a small donation, let's just say $5, $10 a month. That will make you a sustaining member of the station to help ensure it's here for you from here on out. We're going to go back to Science Friday just in a minute, but you still have time to make that call, 866-247-9576 or WLRN.org. Thanks.
We're funded by WLRN members and by Brickell Bank, specialists in wealth management, personal and corporate banking, residential and commercial real estate lending, and trade finance services for domestic and international clients. More at brickellbankmiami.com. Member FDIC.
You can get creative this fall at the Boca Raton Museum Art School with daytime and evening classes in drawing, painting, pottery, photography, and jewelry. More than 100 art classes for adults and children begin the week of October 26th. You can find the complete schedule at bocamuseum.org/artschool. That's bocamuseum.org/artschool. Live Nation presents Yanni, Saturday, February 6th at the Perfect Vodka Amphitheater. Tickets are on sale now for Yanni and are available at livenation.com. That's livenation.com.
When Elon Musk named his electric car the Tesla, he couldn't have chosen a more creative genius and original thinker than Nikola Tesla. Some might say that Musk is a lot like Tesla, willing to go it alone, believe in his own ideas, go out on a limb. So when Musk schooled Detroit on how to build an electric car, showed NASA how to build a better spaceship, and helped shape the modern solar power industry, everyone stood up and took notice of the brilliant innovator who reminds people of Steve Jobs. My next guest is here to give us the inside story of SpaceX, Tesla, and as he calls it, the unified theory of Elon Musk. Ashley Vance is author of the new book, Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. He's based out in Palo Alto, California. Hi, welcome to Science Friday.
Thanks so much for having me.
I just compared Elon Musk to Steve Jobs. A lot of people have. Is it a valid comparison?
You know, there's parts of it that hold. I mean, certainly their management style, demanding everything from workers, their attention to detail, those things hold true. So far, Elon has played in a much more industrial space than Steve Jobs has, and hasn't quite had a big consumer hit. And so in my book, I mean, I tend to compare him a little bit more to somebody, even though he still has a lot to prove, to somebody like Edison.
Does he have an overall, an encompassing vision where he's trying to go with all of his different ideas?
He definitely does, and it may sound crazy to some people. His number one goal in life, his calling, is to build a colony on Mars, and he wants to do this because he thinks that something horrendous can happen to the human species, and we need kind of a backup plan. And then when you look at Tesla and Solar City, they are then sort of answers to improving life on Earth until we can have this Mars colony, or in case this is our only option. So he does sort of have this unified vision.
In fact, you talk about how SpaceX is really almost a mistake, a second thought. He wanted to put a plant on Mars.
So SpaceX started as a publicity stunt, more or less. Elon, some people sort of forget, he really got rich off of PayPal, which he co-founded, and had made this vast fortune, $200 million something, and wanted to do kind of a grand gesture for mankind. And so originally he had wanted to send mice to Mars in a rocket, and then he decided it might be more feasible to make a plant that we could watch via a video feed from the Earth, and we would see this plant grow on Mars and produce oxygen, and it would be kind of this inspirational thing for humanity.
Yeah, and so when he got there, he said, hey, I'd have to buy all the parts. Why not make them myself?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's this pretty funny story. It's kind of one of the odder ways a company gets formed. To do this, he found that he had to go and buy refurbished intercontinental ballistic missiles. That was the only way to get a rocket cheap enough for this stunt, and he had to buy them from the Russians. They were the only ones selling them at the time. This is sort of like 2001, and the Russians sort of treat him as, this rich guy from Silicon Valley, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and they try to bilk him out of a lot of money. And so he comes back from these trips and he says, you know what, I'm going to build a rocket myself, and I think there's a business here in becoming more or less like the Southwest of space.
Now, one of the criticisms of Elon is that he's a hype man that plays the public. There's a little bit of that, is there not?
There's certainly a lot of that, and I had come to this book really as kind of a skeptic. I've been in Silicon Valley for 15 years reporting, and Elon was always the guy to me that was promising the world and either failing to deliver at all or taking longer, and things were more expensive. I think since 2012, when SpaceX got to the International Space Station, Tesla came out with the Model S, Solar City went through an IPO. It's sort of, he's delivered on an awful lot of stuff. He certainly still uses the press and promising the world to get people excited, but you have to give him some points for delivering.
Talking with Ashley Vance, author of Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. Did you get the impression that he's creating this mega battery plant, and he talked about selling batteries for people with solar cells on their homes? Do you think the battery idea is going to outstrip the car business?
It's sort of this incredible thing that Tesla is half a car company and then half potentially an energy company. They're taking the battery technology that Tesla has developed and making this into these storage systems that can go onto your house or onto a building and taking the excess energy from your solar cells. And I mean, it very much remains to be seen how big this business is. It looks like it may be bigger on the commercial side, but Tesla already today is valued at about half the market cap of GM and sells just a teeny fraction of the cars that GM sells. And so you have to believe that at least investors are betting on this idea that Tesla will be an energy company in some shape and form.
But how does he convince investors to invest in an electric car company?
That was a great question. I mean, Tesla's this very unlikely story. So Elon was really the first guy that was willing to put his own money into electric cars. The original guys with Tesla had gone around Silicon Valley and nobody wanted a piece of it except for Elon. And then, you know, it was really Elon's force of will that saw this company through its darkest hour, which was 2008, when the financial markets are crumbling, you know, proper car companies are crumbling, and Tesla almost went bankrupt and pulled through. And then what he's done is built a car that it's not a compromise. I mean, there are people in the automotive industry who argue that the Model S, the car they came out with in 2012, is the best car ever built. It's very safe, it's totally quiet, it's very fast, it's very roomy, and it has this amazing software. And so, you know, he did it by making an amazing product. It's sort of like that would be the Steve Jobs model.
And he put his own money into it first. I guess people respect that when you put your own money.
He put $100 million into SpaceX, about $70 million into Tesla, and about $30 million into Solar City, and is the largest shareholder in all three companies. And you can make a pretty strong case that, you know, without that backing, they wouldn't even have got to start.
Elon has voiced a concern about artificial intelligence. He calls it summoning the demon. He really feels strongly about it?
He does. One of my funniest conversations with him was that we go to sit down for dinner, and Elon doesn't really do small talk, so I said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And he says, "You know, I've just been thinking that AI is going to destroy mankind," and that's sort of what he opened up our chat with. And he told me, you know, he's good friends with Larry Page from Google, and Google happens to have the most advanced AI stuff in the world, and he's kind of afraid that his good buddy is building the end of mankind. And, you know, it's not that he thinks Larry is a bad guy, it's almost that he thinks Larry is too nice and naive about these things.
In your book, you talk about the unified theory of Elon Musk. What do you mean by that?
So this goes in a couple of different ways. I mean, from a pure technology standpoint, you've got this situation, sort of like we talked about a bit, where Tesla and Solar City have their technology merging. You see with SpaceX, they have made these huge advances with some esoteric things, but important things like different welding techniques to make much stronger welds, and now Tesla is using that to make stronger, lighter cars. So there's this technology that lays over all the companies, and then there's a political aspect to this, which is that you know, Elon used to get bullied around in Washington by all these entrenched players. And these days, the sum total of his companies, he employs more than 20,000 people. He's got factories in California, Texas, Nevada, New York, and so, you know, he's a real force to be reckoned with politically as well.
Is he the kind of guy who will start these different projects, get them going, and then move on to another one?
Well, he's had staying power. I mean, the one thing about him is that we see is that he will announce things like the Hyperloop. There's this other thing he wants to do, which is like this space internet surrounding the Earth with thousands of satellites and beaming the internet down. And you know, what I noticed is that he will get these ideas and sort of announce them on a lark, and then everybody takes him very seriously or wants to hear what he's going to do, and then he almost, you know, commits to it in that way, and then doesn't really have time to pursue this stuff.
He's sort of thinking out loud, and people are listening in, and they expect him to move on.
I mean, in all honesty, that's like exactly what the Hyperloop was, and then I think when he saw the reaction to it from the public, he was like, oh God, you know, maybe I have to build this, or maybe I should build this, and so he gets sucked into it. And I would say, as he's gotten wealthier and his fame has grown, you know, his ambition has grown as well, and it was already pretty big to begin with.
Yeah, but he doesn't put on airs very much, does he?
He enjoys being rich and a celebrity, but to your point, you know, when we would have dinner, I mean, he There is no retinue. He just shows up. He sort of has his head down, walks to the table, does not put on a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
For a guy that wants to go to bars, he's kind of down to earth.
Yeah. Thank you. Good luck with the book. Ashley Vance is author of the new book, Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. Ashley Vance says many of Elon Musk's ventures tie back to a desire to send a mission to Mars. Keeping this radio station operating and bringing you the programming you've come to expect is not rocket science. Without your support, public radio can't get off the ground. It's that simple. So please call the station now and show your support. Here's the number.
The number is 866-247-9576, 866-247-WLRN, or click and join online at WLRN.org. And it is not rocket science. It's a very simple procedure. It takes just about 2 minutes of your time, either way, on the phone or online. And you're going to have such a great feeling when you've become a member or you renewed your membership. It's going to make you feel like you really made a difference for South Florida. You really made a difference for news reporting and intelligent conversation and civil discourse. That's what happens when you make your donation. You make a difference, and it doesn't matter the amount. We know some folks can only afford maybe, Chris, maybe a $5 a month sustaining contribution. That's greatly appreciated. By the way, this is Caroline Brader-Watts along with Andy Wagner and Christine DiMattei, and we are here to hopefully get you to become a member of the station that brings you all this great programming.
Yeah, and Caroline, you just mentioned the people who give a little bit each month.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are invaluable. That is
Yes.
so important. Those are sustainable. I love that word. I'm in love with words since the time I'm a child, okay? Sustenance, what a great word. And that's what those folks do, is they sustain us. And it's so important, and it's really very, very easy to do. All you have to do is call 866-247-9576. You can also make your donation online, WLRN.org.
When I first came to South Florida and I had no money, I was listening to the car talk. And when I was listening to them, they said, "We need your help to stay on the air." And so I said, "Oh my God, these guys need help to stay on the air." So I just called in and I gave $25 to the station. To me, NPR, offer a service that's not really available in the media. We get news and information and insights from many different angles, and it's put out in a reflective, peaceful way, not in our ADHD society where everything is fast bits of information.
That's absolutely right, and that was one of our listeners who became a member of the station. And as he said, he couldn't afford a great deal of money, but he felt compelled because he enjoyed the programming. He felt this was an important resource for the community. That's all we ask, is that you participate. You go from being a passive listener to an active participant here in the process. Very easy to do. Once again, that number is 866-247-9576, 866-247-WLRN, or WLRN.org.
And what would Pledge be without gifts? We've got a great one for you. Anyone who can give us a donation of $120 or more gets the WLRN French Press Travel Mug. Isn't that cool? Okay, I love my coffee, and if you love yours, get this thing, $120 or more, and you do that by making your pledge at 866-247-9576.
Or online at WLRN.org. Thanks so much to everyone who's called in or gone online with your support, and thanks again.
The world is coming up next here on 91.3 WLRN HD1, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the Palm Beaches, 91.5 WKWM, HD1 Marathon, and Key West. You can hear us live online, WLRN.org. Thank you for joining us.
Conserve Art restored and framed a painting a client found while cleaning out her mother's condo after she passed. Cleaning revealed that the painting was a signed Renoir. You can restore your treasures too. Insurance claims are a specialty. Details at conserveart.net.
Patti LaBelle, Natalie Cole, Terrence Blanchard, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Kenny G, the Eddie Palmieri Salsa Orchestra, Pete Escobedo, Frank Sinatra Jr., and many more will be celebrating the Adrian Arts Center's 10th anniversary season as part of the 15-16 Jazz Roots season. This highly acclaimed Jazz Roots series may be the best season yet, filled with more than a dozen living legends and Grammy Award winners. You won't want to miss these 6 unforgettable concerts. Packages are available at artscenter.org.
It's 3.
New break in the Lockerbie case. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. Authorities say they have 2 new suspects in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland 27 years ago. And it was this filmmaker who probably reopened the case.
My strong suspicion is we wouldn't be hearing anything about it without the work that I've done in the frontline film.
But the suspects are in a chaotic and war-torn Libya, and getting them won't be easy.
I think it would be highly unlikely, no matter who is in power, for Libyans to extradite those 2 named suspects.
Plus, Conan O'Brien takes his comedy to Armenia and gets a new name.
There is a joke nowadays in Yerevan that he's not Conan O'Brien, but he was Conan O'Brien.
Those stories today on The World.
Hello, I'm Julie Candler with the BBC News. Hungary has defended its decision to seal its border with Croatia from midnight local time to stem the flow of migrants trying to reach Western Europe. The Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said the failure of European Union leaders to deploy a force to keep people from landing in Greece meant Budapest had to take its own action. Nick Thorpe reports from Budapest.
5,000 to 8,000 asylum seekers and migrants currently cross Hungary from Croatia to Austria each day. Refugees will still be able to apply for asylum at 2 so-called transit zones on the border, the Foreign Minister said. But almost all such applications will be rejected automatically on the grounds that migrants have already crossed countries which Hungary regards as safe.
Croatia has said that once the border with Hungary is closed, it will begin diverting migrants to Slovenia. Turkey has said the European Union's offer of financial help to ease the migrant crisis is unacceptable. A package of measures was agreed by EU leaders on Thursday, but the Turkish foreign minister said the amount offered was insignificant and meaningless. He described the entire plan as a draft and not a final agreement. Syrian government forces backed by Russian air power and allied militias have opened a new front against rebel fighters south of Aleppo. Control of Aleppo is divided between the Syrian government, insurgent groups fighting President Bashar al-Assad, and Islamic State militants. More from Jim Young.
According to the rebels who posted this footage on the internet, Russian airstrikes on the countryside south of Aleppo began in the middle of the night to soften up rebel positions for a drawn offensive by Syrian army troops backed by militia and other supporters. This was the latest of at least 4 offensives launched by regime forces with Russian air support in the past 2 weeks.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has strongly condemned a Palestinian arson attack on a Jewish shrine near Nablus in the West Bank. The plan is speaking at the start of an emergency Security Council meeting on the recent surge in violence. The UN Assistant Secretary General Tayyip al-Serhoui suggested that Israeli tactics have contributed to the escalation of violence.
Second factor feeding the escalation has been the apparent heavy-handed approach by the Israeli security services. Wide dissemination of video footage of several incidents fueled more attacks and has raised serious questions as to the appropriate level of force used by the Israeli Defense Forces and police.
The United Nations has voiced concern that continuing fuel shortages in Nepal could prevent essential supplies from reaching victims of April's earthquake before winter snowfall makes roads impassable. World News from the BBC.
Another thing I love about WLR